The hidden terrors of K2. In the darkness of Earth's wild roof, a monstrous shadow rises, taller than the clouds, lonelier than any place you've ever known. This is not Everest, where the crowds leave their trails and egos. No, this is K2, the savage mountain. Here, the names of the dead are whispered by the wind, and ice falls heavier than any secret man has ever carried. What is it about K2, this cathedral of rock on the ragged frontier of Pakistan and China, that draws in the hopeful, yet so often releases only their ghosts? Why do the most prepared, the most determined, the most skilled adventurers meet mystery, madness, and sometimes, without a trace, erasure? Tonight, we slip into the mist and lore of K2's deadliest puzzles, the unexplained deaths and vanishings. Strange weather that turns daylight to despair in seconds. Psychological maelstroms that twist minds and fracture teams. Equipment that, at the worst moment, fails for no reason. Apparitions, voices in the wind, and anomalies caught on tape, or left behind on a camera by trembling hands. Welcome, travelers of the unknown. Prepare to be unsettled. Welcome to K2, where not every answer is meant for the living. History etched in ice, K2's unforgiving chronicle K2, or Chogori, as the Balti herders once murmured from afar, meaning king of mountains, is the world's second highest peak at 8,611 meters. But among the League of Giants, none is more feared. Climbers call it the Savage Mountain, and with reason, before 2021, for every 4 who summited, 1 would never return. Despite advances, by August 2023, the ratio stood at 96 deaths for roughly 800 summits, a fatality rate unthinkable even on Everest's crowded slopes. Most know the legend. The British surveyors, unable to find a local name in the 1850s, marked it K2. And the symbolism stuck, an impersonal scientific cipher. It's as if the mountain itself refused to be named, to be owned, or to give up its purpose. The Kingdom of Storms, a magnet for fate's darkest designs. But there is more behind the vertical walls and data. In Baltistan, they whisper that the true name was never meant to be spoken, that the mountain always watched and always claimed its price. From the first failed expeditions in the early 20th century, the line between courage and catastrophe on this peak has been thinner than a snow cornice. Whether it was Aleister Crowley's doomed 1902 attempt or the triumphant, yet controversial, 1954 Italian ascent, K2's story is written in ambition, rivalry, and the chilling knowledge that the mountain does not forgive mistakes. K2 never became Everest. No commercial herds, no easy routes, no soft romance. Instead, it stayed the private obsession of the world's boldest, or, as some would argue, its most reckless. Into the Bottleneck, the 2008 disaster and enduring enigmas. On the night of August 1st, 2008, 31 climbers began the summit push, driven by a rare window in the ruthless summer weather. Within 27 hours, 11 people lay dead, the highest toll in K2's history, a convergence of errors, chance, and unresolved questions. What really happened? The official story: confusion over missing rope, a logjam of exhausted mountaineers in the Bottleneck, a 100-meter stretch beneath looming Seracs, where any movement above can trigger a cascade of icefall and death. As evening bled into night, an ice Serac collapsed, cutting the return path and stranding dozens in the death zone, where oxygen is vanishing and judgment dissolves. But even now, the court of K2 is haunted by detail and doubt. Why did experienced climbers ignore the standard turnaround times, gambling with life for a summit at dusk? Who failed to supply the crucial ropes, and why were they misplaced? How did vital communications unravel into chaos? Why could some cling to sanity and safety, while others vanished or walked into oblivion, barely resisting their fates? Among the dead was Irishman Gerard McDonnell, last seen trying to rescue 3 Korean climbers ensnared in a tangle of ropes, only to vanish in the next avalanche. Norwegian Rolf Bay swept away before his wife's eyes, and others whose remains were never found, resigning mystery as the only survivor. Survivors' voices recount delirium, phantom lights, and overwhelming confusion. We were walking in circles all night, Survivor Wilco van Rooyen told National Geographic. Sometimes I thought I saw shapes moving or heard voices, but we were utterly alone, or so I thought. Was it pure human blunder or something more? A spell of madness, a curse from the savage mountain, or simply the inhuman will of the peak, personified in shattered plans and the randomness of fate? In-depth analysis. Every fact is shadowed by contradiction. Was a climber delirious from altitude, or did he choose to cut loose and walk off the rope? Did 3 Koreans refuse assistance willingly, or was it the language of panic, lost in translation? Moments before the avalanche, thermal tension was suspected to trigger the collapse by the warming weather. But what makes the Serac finally choose its moment? And why, on this night, did phantom headlamps blink out above the bottleneck, never to be seen again? Some survivors describe moments of sensing invisible company or glimpsing lost friends in the gloom, just as the story of K2 demands, for no one is truly alone in the death zone. Disappearances and untraceable losses. Shadows in the mist. Not every death on K2 gives its story to the living. Some simply vanish, as if the mountain swallows them whole 17. In 2021, during a historic winter expedition, the mountain's first true winter, temperatures plummeting to 60 degrees, 3 climbers vanished in sight of the infamous Bottleneck. Ali Sadpara, a Pakistani legend, John Snorri, Iceland, Juan Pablo Moore, Chile. Their last movements were marked in GPS data. Sajid Sadpara, Ali's son, returned to camp suffering from oxygen system failure, never to see his companions again. Weeks passed. Search and rescue helicopters scoured the route. Nothing. It was only months later, as spring thawed K2's flanks, that their bodies were discovered, still harnessed to ropes near the Bottleneck, standing silent at the edge between legend and truth 18. How did 3 of the world's most seasoned climbers, with all the experience and technology of modern alpinism, simply vanish in hours? Speculation swirled. Were they lost in hallucination, climbing until exhaustion and cold erased their senses? Did a silent avalanche sweep them away? Or, most unsettling, did they achieve the summit, only to freeze in mere meters from salvation? Photographic data, corrupted and incomplete, was recovered from a camera. One final cryptic image, a pair of climbers' boots in the snow, attached to a swaying rope. In this liminal place, K2 keeps its secrets. Was their end simple, or did something deeper, a force, a fate, a mountain's demand, intervene? Phenomena beyond the natural, weather, ghosts, and a mountain. With no mercy, climbers say that K2 is different. Not just harder, not just colder, but that its moods are unpredictable and sometimes uncanny. Storms gather without warning, erasing blue sky in minutes. Visibility drops to arm's length, lightning crackles on glaciers, and wind tears tents from the rocks as if with a will. Winter on K2 is a season from another world. No sunlight reaches the camps for days. Hurricane-force gales known to exceed 200 kph can appear in minutes, flattening equipment and hope. Temperatures fall with unearthly cruelty, often to 60 degrees Celsius, threatening death by exposure in an hour. A 2024 expedition found their tents at Camp 2 shredded and blown away. "We have lost everything," one climber radioed base camp. "Sleeping bags, food, stoves, all gone." There is no forgiveness here, only the wind and what it leaves behind. And yet the mountain offers more than meteorological menace. Reports persist of phantom headlamps, lights moving in places where no climber should be, blinking out suddenly. At times, climbers stranded above a storm describe ghostly presences guiding them out or calling them to remain. As chronicled in mountaineering literature, such as The Ghosts of K2 and Savage Summit, these mental apparitions are sometimes explained away as the effects of high-altitude hypoxia. But others prefer older stories, that the mountain's dead do not rest, that the curse of K2, especially for female climbers historically, is more than just statistical misfortune. Julie Tullis, British climber and filmmaker, died in K2's Black Summer of 1986. Her companions later reported hearing her voice on a radio transmission weeks after her death, calling base camp. "Camp 4 to base camp. Do you read over?" No one was on the mountain. No one could explain the voice. "Everything goes strange up there," one Sherpa guide admitted. "You see shadows in the fog, and sometimes they speak." The psychology of the death zone. Madness, euphoria, and decisions beyond sense. Above 8,000 meters, humans enter the death zone. Oxygen levels drop so low that even the best prepared brains begin to falter. Acute mountain sickness, high-altitude cerebral edema, HACE, and pulmonary edema can descend with terrifying speed. Confusion, delirium, dizziness, loss of memory, hallucinations. Decision-making warps. Some climbers exult in the glow of the summit, only to collapse in despair, unable to descend. On K2, this cognitive trap has lured even the experienced, a mind trap, where the compulsion to summit overcomes all logic. Red herrings abound in such crises. The brain invents false threats, suspects betrayal, or misinterprets crucial radio calls. In the 2008 disaster, rescuers reported strange, cold logic, as otherwise capable climbers stood in place, unable to move, or wandered into darkness as if drawn by an unseen hand. Euphoria and terror can arrive together. Dreams of triumph dissolve into shocked sobs, or, more dangerously, silence. These are the conditions where ghosts are most often seen and where reality softens. Survivors like Wilco van Rooyen describe out-of-body moments. "There were so many moments when I thought I saw a climber and thought I heard voices, but I knew there couldn't be people there. It was a scary moment when I knew I was reaching my limits." But some do not stop at hallucinations. There are stories, local and climber alike, of climbers compelled by the mountain's call, walking ropeless into the void, leaving only silent footprints behind. Technical nightmares, the bottleneck, equipment failures, and fatal oversights. The bottleneck, K2's most infamous feature, is a 55-60-degree snow and ice chute, overhung by unstable Seracs. It's the mountain's gatekeeper and executioner. Crossing it can take hours, every second a risk of avalanche, and every delay a setup for havoc. But even with modern gear, horror lingers. Ropes freeze or fail, oxygen regulators jam. Radios die in the cold. In 2021, an oxygen kit malfunctioned for Sajid Sadpara, forcing a retreat that may have cost his team their last chance at return, or perversely, saved his own life. Equipment, often redundant, has a cruel way of failing when needed most. Several summiteers in 2008 depended entirely on the fixed ropes. When avalanches or accidents cut the lines, they were left exposed, having to free solo their way down in darkness. Many never made it. Inexplicable clues are sometimes found. Cameras and GPS trackers left behind preserve only a moment frozen. A boot in the snow, a blink of a headlamp, a cryptic final image showing only ice and shadow. These records become artifacts of endings, testimonies without interpreters, legends, folklore, and the living spirits of K2. It is not only the climbers who cloak K2 in mystery. The Balti people, who call the region home, have their own stories. They say that Chogori, the big mountain, guards hidden realms and caution outsiders not to disrespect its spirit. Superstitions persist, including the curse of K2, which held that the mountain was especially deadly for women. For decades, women who reached the summit perished soon after. Wanda Rutkiewicz, Liliane Berard, Julie Tullis, all of whom died during or just after their K2 triumphs. It wasn't until recently, with the successful and safe descent of several female climbers, that the curse began to lose its grip. Still, local porters whisper warnings to each other in the shadow of the mountain. It is better to tread lightly here. The mountain remembers. There are also tales of vanished caravans, of chanting heard deep in the ice corridors, of a white goddess whose presence brings storms for the unworthy. In the rare villages that dot the valleys beneath K2, elders speak of the days when the mountain would change shape at sunrise, as if it were watching. Climax. Patterns in chaos. Red herrings and unbroken codes. In every tale of disaster on K2, there are red herrings, stories that seem to offer explanation but only deepen confusion. As in the world's best detective fiction, climbers, investigators, and even rescue teams are dragged down false trails. Was the missing rope in 2008 simply a miscommunication or a deliberate decision out of fear? Were the Koreans in 2008 trapped and abandoned, or is that a myth shaped by guilt and survivor testimony? The deeper we dig, the less solid the foundations. Ice erases footprints. Winds scatter gear. Records are corrupted, lost, or never made. Narratives diverge. What at first seems to be a certain answer. It was the equipment. It was the weather. It was summit fever. Collapses under new data or eyewitness contradiction. Perhaps this is K2's final lesson, that some puzzles are never solved. That the chaos of weather, altitude, and psychological breakdown is not a code, but a reality beyond tidy explanation. To search for reason here is to risk yourself being caught in the mountain's legend. Maybe, as survivor Wilco van Rooyen mused, it is better to survive with questions than to die believing you understood. Epilogue. Legacy and Ghosts, a thoughtful conclusion. By the flicker of a campfire, as glaciers grind and stars gather above, one question remains. Why do we climb? What draws humans to K2, to risk weather, madness, and oblivion? Is it the lure of the unknown? Or the desire to confront our own limits, even if it means walking among ghosts? K2 keeps its secrets. It is at once a monument to ambition and a graveyard for answers. The tapes and photographs, the gear frozen in time, the testimonies of those who saw too much and survived. These are not endings, but reminders. On K2, to live is to embrace the mystery. And whether you are a climber or a dreamer, remember this. The next time the wind howls on a lonely ridge, it could be just the weather. Or perhaps a shadow passing, brushing past your soul, reminding you that in some places not every story wants to be told. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking it and subscribing to our channel for more content. To help me decide what to cover next, leave a comment below and let me know which topic you'd like to see in our next video. And don't forget to share this with someone who might find it useful.